Hello and welcome to this round 4 here at Pro Tour Oath the Gatewatch. I'm Tim Willoughby here with Hall of Famer Randy Bueller, and we're going to head right down to the feature match area because I don't know about you, Randy, but I want to see some modern. Hello and welcome to this round 4 of Pro Tour Oath of the Gatewatch. This the very first round where we get to see what modern decks have been brought to the table, and starting out in our feature match area, 2 great players. We begin with Christian Calcano. Calcano, based out of New York. He has shown up with Jun. Basically, he's decided, you know what? I like having lots of good removal in the format. And his opponent, Ben Stark of Team Ultra Pro, he's kind of come to a similar conclusion. Removal is very, very strong, but a slightly different choice of cards.
Yeah, this is Mardu. This has a lot of cards that overlap with Calcano. He's got Lightning Bolt, Inquisition, Dark Confidant, Thoughtseize, Liliana, a couple Kolaghan's Command. That part looks very familiar, but there's no green mana in Ben Stark's list. No Tarmogoyf, no Abrupt Decay. Instead, he's got white mana for Path, for Lingering Souls, crucially, as the main deck card, and, the sideboard also becomes amazing if you have access to white mana.
Yeah, you get the likes of your Stony Silence and Rest in Peace, but we get to see Ajani Vengeance in Stark's hand there, along with Path to Exile, Abrupt Keep, Lightning Bolt. The Path goes away after a Thoughtseize from Calcano, and no plays apart from just that Shambling Vent turn 1 from Stark. Yeah, with both players with as much removal as they have, it seems likely that we're going to have a relatively slow kickoff to this game, as each player just sort of one-for-one's jockeying for position, I would imagine. Jund, of course, very happy to one-for-one all day long.
I wonder how much of Team Ultra Pro is on this Mardu deck. Like, is this just the team deck they came up with?
Quite possibly. And it's funny because it's a color combination we've seen a lot of play of in Standard, but not necessarily one that has really made a name for itself yet in Modern.
No, it's really been Abzan has been the way to play white sideboard cards with black historically.
Yeah, I mean, it must be said, though, not necessarily too many surprises about individual cards that you might see from Ben Stark. A lot of them are kind of the big players that we've seen in Jun, the big players that we've seen in assorted Jeskai lists. And
then a random Majani.
Yeah, we've seen some of that in Jeskai here and there. Tarmogoyf, though, the first damage dealer in the game, apart from lands themselves.
So Thoughtseize your Path, play my Tarmogoyf is still good?
As it turns out.
2 Lightning Bolts in Ben Stark's hand are not going to get the job done.
Yeah, instant land and sorcery in the graveyard. So each of those Tarmogoyfs is a 3/4. Able to get the beats on pretty fast and laughing in the face of at least 1 Lightning Bolt apiece. How about Abbot of Kerrickle Keep, kind of an interesting addition to this deck?
Yeah, that's a nice one.
Red, of course, getting a little bit of access to card advantage in its own special way as you play it. Exile the top card of the library, you've got a little bit of a time to cast that spell, because at the end of turn you can play that card.
And Calcano could, in theory, have that in his list as well. Does not.
Yeah, Calcano's list, kind of classic, but for the low Abrupt Decay count, I suppose. Abrupt Decay not as good as perhaps it has been in previous modern formats.
It's a 2 of here. Wow, the curve in this Mardu list is super low. There's 15 1-mana removal spells, or removal and or discard.
And I guess that means that the 4 Dark Confidant that much safer.
And that the Abbots get turned on that much faster.
Carcano's life total, taking a real hit off fetch lands plus that Thoughtseize. And here's Lingering Souls, meaning that plenty of blockers available for Ben Stark.
They're chump blockers, though.
Stark declines the block there. And Scavenging Ooze not quite on time to be able to eat that Lingering Souls before it's flashed back, because Christian Calcano is still stuck on just the 2 lands. Given time, Scavenging Ooze can eat just about anything from any graveyard. Obviously, it's ideal if you're eating creatures, but he certainly wouldn't have minded being able to eat that Lingering Souls before it's flashed back. And Ben Stark, under a little bit of pressure to do that sooner rather than later, just so he can actually extract full value from his cards.
4 red spells in Ben's hand, but only 1 red mana.
I mean, a temptation here to get a Johnny Vengeant in play, lock down one of the lands that Calcano's got going on so that he's basically stuck with what he's got going on in play.
Yeah, I mean, he can do that. He can also go Lingering Souls plus Lightning Bolt. He can also play an Abbot and then see what happens.
The wonders of having cheap spells in your deck, plenty of options. You can see there in the background some of our other players in this feature match area. As always at the Pro Tour, plenty of top names to look at. We're going to get a chance to look in on. On the King of the Hill table, Ryuichi Tamada is playing against Joseph Presley from the USA. On our text table, we've got Shota Yasuoka against Matej Zalkai. They both 3-0'd their pods. And we also have Alejandro Cesar from Argentina, top 4 to recent GP, and it's here on his first GP. He is playing the red decks as suited to his team, up against Bartolome Lewandowski.
Yeah, Calcano just turns him sideways.
In spite of only having 1 mana up. Well, in spite of only having 2 mana in total, sorry, Calcano with lots of options himself. Slaughter Pact, not something he's going to want to cast just yet, but he's got plenty of removal too.
It's funny how Lightning Bolting the Scavenging Ooze does not actually save any damage. Just makes both the Tarmogoyfs bigger.
Oh, there's already a Path to Exile in the Graveyard though, right?
There's no creature.
Oh, yes, of course.
Has priority. Take 6, or sorry, 5. All right, go.
A single-digit life total for Ben Stark, and there is a Lightning Bolt in Calcano's hand, just a few points away from closing this one out.
Gotta imagine we're gonna see Bolt on Scavenging Ooze here.
Now, I was speaking to Calcano yesterday, actually, and he was saying that he's just sort of recovering from a little bit of a... he's not actually been able to test too much because he's been a little bit under the weather in this last week or so.
Sure.
Clearly, he shook that off for the draft, rattled off a 3-0, and is now looking pretty good in this first game against Hall of Famer Ben Stark.
Can Ben afford... Ben has 2 Lightning Bolts, right?
He does.
If he could bolt Calcano's face and try to turn it into a race. Like 2 Lightning Bolts to the face. Calcano's now at 5.
Goyf? Yeah.
Bolts the Goyf that got blocked by the Spirit Token. So it already has a point of damage on it, and this Lightning Bolt will, in fact, take it down.
So my turn.
Ben had a lot of choices there. You could make the case for Goyf or Ooze or possibly even Calcano. I guess he doesn't have enough red mana for the Flurry of Burn to finish him off.
Liliana of the Veil, the draw there for Ben Stark. Both of these decks loving Liliana.
That's a great draw. Down goes the other Tarmogoyf. Yeah, she just comes into play with 1 loyalty.
Yeah. -2. Target player sacrifices a creature. Christian Calcano's board empty but for a rather sad-looking 2 lands at this stage in the game. A quick update from the back tables. We have a first game from Matej Zalkai over Shota Yasuoka. Matej Zalkai playing Death Shadow aggro, and that meaning that Teemo Battle Rage plus Death Shadow killing off opponents real quick. It was a 9-9.
9/9 double striking Death Shadow. That's what you just said.
Yeah, that'll do it.
I guess that will do it. Death Shadow. Modern's awesome.
So Inquisition of Kozilek here. Plenty of targets on the other side. There's a Scavenging Ooze, Dark Confidant, Kolaghan's Commander, Terminate, and a Slaughter Pact. Calcano had a lot going on in his hand, not too much in the way of mana, and Ben Stark with an abundance of choices to take here.
He got bended too. I mean, he basically Lightning Bolted playing to try to top deck the burn. Yeah, Johnny Vengeant. Let me get back up to 5 damage here, 5 life.
And there's also the potential for a Shambling Vent attack at some point to gain some life. So Ben Stark's 5-point life total, not quite as precarious as it may have looked mere moments ago.
Wow, there's the land. Polygon's Command.
And on another one of our back tables, Bartolome Lewandowski, a game up against Alejandro Cesar. We may be able to get you a little bit of that match in between our games here, between our main current video match between Christian Calcano and Ben Stark, both teetering on the brink.
I'll just make you discard and go to the okay.
Makes sense. See the last card. Smart.
I remember what it was. I mean, I wasn't sure if
There's the Colligan's command, but
Yeah.
ultimately not enough.
Yeah, well, Calcano, he played it to... If he drew the land before the Inquisition, then the Polygon's Command would have been the last 2 points of
I
damage.
already tell this is not going to get a lot.
Ben Stark sequenced that really well. I mean, it helps that Calcano had mana problems, but interesting game.
So we've somehow managed to engineer it so that we've got some synchronized shuffling going on here in our feature match area. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, because this is absolutely the kind of format where talking about sideboards becomes real relevant. But before we see any more magic, we are going to now have a quick commercial break. We'll be back real soon.
Qualify for the next Pro Tour on Magic Online. Go 5-0 or 4-1 in a preliminary to advance to the finals. You can see the full schedule at mtgo.com. Standard is the name of the game at Oath of the Gatewatch Game Day. Join the action on February 13th and 14th at your local game store. Visit magic.wizards.com/game-day for more information.
Hello and welcome back to this, our fourth round here at Pro Tour Oath of the Gatewatch. The format is modern. All our players currently shuffling up. We will hope to get you some magic very shortly. But in the meantime, let's talk a little bit about sideboards, Randy, because this is the format where they can end up being super duper relevant.
Oh, yeah, especially Affinity. I think we're going to get to peek in on Shota Yasuoka with his Affinity deck on the back table. But I don't know how sideboarding works when you're Death Shadow aggro. There you get a good look at Shota, recent Hall of Famer. He has shown up with an Affinity list, which in and of itself is already kind of an interesting storyline. But Matej Zadelkai is playing Death Shadow.
Now, Death Shadow, a very interesting deck. It's in some respects, it looks kind of similar to a Zoo list. It's very, very aggressive, but it's aggressive with both players' life totals.
Right, right. The way Death Shadow works, you have to damage yourself before it's any good. And so you damage yourself with your lands, of course, your Gitaxian probes, your mutagenic growths. The lower your life total gets, the bigger the Death Shadow becomes.
Yeah, Death Shadow, starting off, on paper, it's a 13/13 for just a single black mana, but it gets -1/-1 for each point of life that you have. So while your life total's more than 13, you just can't play it.
Right.
But if you can get your life total down to single digits, then you have a gigantic creature for
For
very
one
little
mana.
investment. Yeah.
For 1 mana, yeah, it's awesome. This the Affinity deck Shota's got, by the way, it's got some spice in it. This is 4 Master of the Ethereum. This is couple of Insol artifacts floating around this list. It's a nice take on Affinity, actually.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few interesting options here. I mean, for the Death Shadow deck, it needs to be a little bit careful just about people being able to burn it out. And we do see Galvanic Blasts in the list from Yasuoka. An
Sorry.
extra one of them in the sideboard.
You mentioned sideboards, by the way. Guess what Shota Yasuoka has in his sideboard of Affinity?
Some great artifact.
Thought-Knot Seer.
I mean, it's colorless, but that is certainly an unusual addition compared to normal. We see the game kicking off here.
4 copies.
This is how Affinity rolls. Turn 1, Mox Opal, Darksteel Citadel, Welding Jar. He's got 2 mana. That is an Arcbound Ravager immediately in play on the first turn. This is how you race a Death Shadow deck. Inquisition
gets a Master.
And reveals that there's another Master coming in the very next turn alongside a Glimmer Void in hand for Shota Yasuoka. Now, Yasuoka's list, let's have a little look in terms of how it sits on Thought Cast. That's sometimes an option that is helpful to
3.
refuel. 3 copies, pretty solid. I would imagine that we'll see some of them after sideboarding too. But in the meantime, a pretty big Master of Ethereum and an attacking 2/2 Arcbound Ravager. There are occasionally some weird lines in this sort of a matchup where the Affinity deck may not want to attack if it can't quite kill the opponent.
Pay 2 life to cycle Street Wraith. Pay 2 life to cycle Street Wraith. Pay 2 life to cycle Street Wraith. That's the line. I love this deck. But he's got nothing. All that cycling in all Matei has come up with is more Inquisitions that are now too late. I guess Naturalize is decent. Yeah, the Naturalize can take out the Master. Although, nope, well, it takes out the Welding Jar is what it takes out.
Yeah, Welding Jar, a key component in this, just to say the first removal spell is not a particularly great removal spell.
Okay, he looked with Inquisition, saw Thoughtseize, which is a swing and a miss.
Yeah, Thoughtseize next turn for just a single blue mana will draw Shota Yasuoka 2 cards. Zalkai on 10, which on the face of things looks really bad, but in practice may not end up that way.
Well, he's got to draw Death Shadow in a hurry.
Yeah.
Like, the Affinity deck is not going to take long to do the rest of the damage.
It looked like we might have seen a natural state from Matei Zalkai's list. There's one come out of the sideboard, and that effectively a 1-mana naturalize,
Sure.
Albeit one that can't hit things that cost more than 3. But in Modern, there's not too many things that end up getting played that cost more than 3, at least in Affinity. So Shota Yasuoka here. We looked at this match and we knew that it was going to be one that if we wanted to get to, we'd have to get to fast, because these are quick decks, and Yasuoka generally a pretty quick player.
All right. Well, Yasuoka did use the Welding Jar to save Ravager from Lightning Bolt. He didn't particularly want to feed his artifacts to the Ravager, because then his Master of Ethereum would shrink. This does, however, open up the ability for Matei to use that Natural Slate on the Master. Yeah, he is not the beatdown deck this game. He's just desperately trying to deal with everything Shota has put down. And wow, Matei's hand is not set up to deal with this.
Yeah, the Death Shadow aggro deck, it has a very, very low curve. It doesn't ever really want to get to more than 2.
Yeah, 5 land is just a catastrophe. You can't really, I mean, you can't even really use the 3rd land, maybe the 4th one.
So a swing for 6 from Master of Ethereum, and then a further 2 from...
Yeah.
Yep, that'll be it. So we are at 1-1 in our match on the back table already. And we get a chance to go back and see the start of Game 2 between Christian Calcano and Ben Stark.
All right, well, I think we're going to try to make sure we get everybody on camera. So Alejandro Cesa gets to make his debut. He's on a burn deck, of course. He's Brotherhood of the Fire. What do they call it?
Yes, I believe that's the translation.
It's a translation, so close enough.
The card from the dark, doing plenty of damage to everybody with red spells.
And Bartolome Lewandowski is on Abzan Company.
Collector Company, the latest in the ways that the Abzan deck is able to get crazy card advantage. But
yeah, well, this is a pretty full-on combo version of it. It looked like at first glance. You know, he's got Chords and Collected Company, and he can set up the whole Murderous Redcap. Whether it's Malira or Anafenza Kintry Spirit, you get the combo that, the whole Vizara Seer combo that Pod used to have.
As much as it's a big pun, it seems like this Malira combo just never dies. In the meantime, though, Alejandro Cesa, his aggro deck, I mean, we're calling it burn, but you'll notice there's a lot of creatures in play. That not a coincidence. Between Goblin Guide, Wild Nicatl, and that Eidolon down there, lots and lots of damage potential from the red deck. And still cards in hand for Cesa, so he will be able to get more damage on very shortly. But a Spellskite potentially a little bit of a problem for Cesa, as it will be able to suck up at least one removal spell / burn spell from the Argentinian. So Cesa just pondering his attacks here a little bit.
And Lewandowski's up a game here, right?
Yeah. I mean, after a fantastic start in draft, this is certainly not exactly where Cesa would want to be.
Card?
tricky thing with that Eidolon, of course, it does affect both players, and realistically, I would guess that almost everything in Cesar's deck is going to be something that he's going to be taking damage off, as in when he casts his spells.
Yeah, this is... It's every card in the deck. I mean, it's basically a burn deck with a green splash. A little heavy on the creatures. He does have Wild Nacatls, as you can see here. But it means also, you know, Lava Spikes and Rift Bolts, Searing Blazes. All the usual suspects. All right, 3 to you and 2 to me. Take that trade, especially when you're up 5 life.
And I'm gonna think about the bolts.
You for?
I'm thinking about the bolts.
Ah, okay, sorry.
And Lewandowski just having a think about the bolt, because he does have activation on that spell Sky if he wants.
Sure. Pay 2 life, change the target.
And it beats taking 3, right?
It means that the Spellskite will have 3 damage on it.
Pay 2 life and redirect the bolt to Spellskite.
Yeah, so he saves a point on his life total, but it means if he winds up blocking with the Spellskite this turn, it's going to die.
And not too much reason for Cesar to hold back on attacks here, really. I mean, yes, killing off Voice of Resurgence, not precisely where he would want to be either, because it will be a big creature, but if the burn deck's not killing people, what is it doing?
Goblin Guide reveals Anaphensic Kintree Spirit.
Which would require the Bird of Paradise to be able to be cast at the moment.
Our blockers.
Okay.
All
Tell
right.
you when I finish.
Bartolome here being careful about his blocks. He says he'll tell you when I'm finished.
So this is a trade for the Eidolon. Goblin Guide bounces off the wall, and Nacatl kills Spellskite, which already has 3 damage on it from the previous Lightning Bolt.
And a 3/3 elemental will come into play. There it is, green and white.
Replacement Eidolon.
That's where you want to be. You don't want it to be that your opponent's got mana untapped on their turn to cast
Sure.
spells before the Eidolon comes in and you're sort of stuck underneath yours on your turn. So both players know about the Anafenza, but one more card in Lewandowski's hand here. Lewandowski kind of put in a quandary here. 10 damage, quite a lot to be able to achieve here. You would have loved to have seen a Kitchen Finks coming along somewhere here, because I'm sure there will be some in this list. Just passes things back with mana up.
That was a very quick untap from Alejandro Cesa. He seemed delighted to have nothing go horribly wrong on Lewandowski's turn.
I mean, this is the sort of deck that can do naughty things with Chord of Calling.
Oh, yeah. That's a good point.
Grim Lavamancer in hand for Cesar, and a few cards in the graveyard to work with. Yes, he's taking a couple of points to cast it, but that does pressure the life total just a little bit more.
Suspend a Rift Bolt.
All right, so 5 damage
Yeah,
is on
looming.
the table.
Looming. There was no end step instant for Lewandowski.
Yeah, his hand appears to be a Viscera Seer, Noble Hierarch, and that Anafenza that both players know about.
That doesn't seem good for this looming 5 damage.
Yeah, as much as we have this list sort of listed down as being Abzan Company, that Stomping Ground suggests that there's a few extra tricks up its sleeve, but none of those tricks right now seeming good enough.
All right, here's Anafenza. Eidolon trigger.
Well, now the
Sure.
Elemental's good and big.
Yeah, I mean, this is desperation mode for Lewandowski. He's just trying to hope Seiso mess this up somehow. I think he knows he's beat.
So the double block there, meaning that even something like a Teemo Battle Rage isn't going to lead to something weird going on. But
Yep.
with the Eidolon in play, there weren't too many spells that going to get
So
cast there.
those guys are headed to game 3.
And
But
we're gonna
speaking
get
of
a
game
chance-
3s, love it. We get to see the third game now between Shota Yasuoka and Matai Zadokai. See if we get to see Death Shadow aggro do its thing.
Well, its first thing is we can already see a fetch lands happen, and it's
Yes.
fetched an untapped Stomping Ground.
Yes,
so
paying life. This is exactly what we want to do.
bizarrely, yeah. I mean, this is not a hand with Death Shadow, but it is a hand with Monastery Swift Spear, Wild Nicadal, Mishra's Bauble. Plenty of room for aggression here. Pyroclasm, kind of an interesting one here. Again, some affinity draws, fantastic. Others, not so much. Quick update on our King of the Hill match. Ryuichi Tamada being forced to a third game as he's playing against Joseph Presley of the USA. That Hate Bears versus Eldrazi match, which we may be able to bring you a little bit of, depending on how these last games all shake out.
Did you say Eldrazi?
I very much did.
So it is here.
Oh yeah, they're looming in the background. It seems very flavorful and appropriate. Matej Zalkai figuring out the details about how he's going to do things. That Mishra's Bauble, yes, it represents drawing a card, but later on it represents a prowess
It's a
trigger.
prowess trigger, exactly. And Shota's got Thought Knots here in his hand.
I mean, not one that Matej Zalkai needs to play around for a few turns yet, regardless. But even once Shota's up to 4 mana, I'm not convinced that it's a card that will be top of Matej's list of things that he would be expecting from Affinity.
Go to 15.
Pyroclasm just to kill Vault Scourge.
The old combo of Glimmer Void plus Darksteel Citadel, meaning that there's every color of mana available to Shota. All he's got is Cranial Plating. When you've got it with other things, it's fantastic. On its own, not so much. And the Street Wraiths start cycling. Those guys apparently come in packs. Occasionally you'll see one cast, and the Swamp Walk relevant, but most of the time, paying 2 life, discarding a Street Wraith to draw a card.
Mishra's Bauble. Now he knows what Shota's going to draw, but Shota doesn't know.
The dramatic irony,
Oh,
pretty good.
Stony Silence.
So Stony Silence meaning activated abilities of artifacts can't be played. Cranial Plating doesn't do a whole lot anymore. Neither does Darksteel Citadel.
Wow, that's another advantage of this Death Shadow deck is the fact you find your sideboard cards more often, right?
Yeah, you get to
Cycle,
cycle
cycle,
about.
cycle. Couple of Stony Silences hide in the sideboard for this matchup. I don't think this is a particularly good matchup for Death Shadow aggro. You can't afford to deal this much damage to yourself if your opponent is also a linear aggro deck. But Matej had the Teamer Battle Rage in game 1, and looking like he's got the sideboard card he needs to win here in game 3.
The funny thing being, of course, that playing that Darksteel Citadel, even though it doesn't tap for mana, did turn on Metalcraft so that Galvanic Blast deals 4.
Wow.
When it's just a shock, not too exciting, but 4 damage on 1 mana is a very good rate.
Yeah, Shota playing for the second Galvanic Blast.
Yeah, unlikely to get up the mana to cast any of his big spells. But a
Uh-oh.
Become Immense here from Matej Zalkai.
Become Immense.
That secures the handshake.
That is become 4-0 is what Matej has done. Wow.
Well, we're going to get a chance to see even more Magic. Back to table A here. We're going to get a chance to see some more of Christian Calcano versus Ben Stark. When last we saw them, it was Ben Stark capitalizing on a shaky mana draw from Christian Calcano.
Yep.
This time around, it looks like Calcano's been able to piece things together a little bit. 2 Dark Confidence in play. And Altseas here revealing Bolt Colligan Command, and there that Fulminator Mage with plenty of targets on the other side of the board. You can see there, Calcano, 27 years old. He's been around the Pro Tour for a little bit of time. He just missed out on Rookie of the Year in his very first season and has been a regular on the Pro Tour ever since. And that being around sort of
21
Scars of
Pro
Mirrodin
Tours.
sort of time.
Not a small number. Nice 55% winning percentage, too. 100 more Grand Prix than Pro Tours.
Comboing off.
Yeah.
A little easier to make it to a few more Grand Prix.
But probably my only outs for the game. So.
That is a ton of Grand Prix.
And Ben Stark very much on the back foot here. Even though he's got the life total advantage, those Dark Confidants,
Yeah.
yeah, they draw a huge amount of gas. And I think Ben Stark there saying, to be honest, at this point, my best chance is you drawing things that cost a lot with those Dark Confidants and me maybe being able to sneak in some damage.
Pretty much.
Originally printed in Ravnica, City of Guilds. Designed by Bob Maher,
Maher.
Hall of Famer here this weekend.
Yeah, Bob unable to make the Pro Tour this weekend.
Oh, I'm
But,
sorry, yes.
Yeah, death in the family, unfortunately, for Bob. But he's here in spirit in those Dark Confidants.
Yeah, Dark Confidant getting a lot of action this weekend, I'm sure.
I know my handwriting's terrible.
And we can see a lone Thopter in play there. That because Christian Calcano's Jund deck in the 4-drop is playing Pia and Kiran Nala. That now in the graveyard, but one Thopter remaining. Is Stark going to be able to successfully use those Dark Confidants to eke out a win here? It's looking kind of close.
Fulminator Mage, a decent answer to that Shambling vent.
Yeah, a solid 2/2 for 3 that can be cast pretty easily off the Jund mana base. And very, very good against the likes of Tron. Pretty good here too.
Terminating the Spirit Token. Not interested in going from 4 to 3.
What else am I going to do?
Dark
All right.
Confidant. What is on top of the deck? Oh!
Now,
2 life.
does Christian have the option of...
Oh! Death by Dark Confidant. Ben Stark wins the match.
It's one way to do it. It's not necessarily pretty, but you'll certainly take it. But I mean, Calcano did have the option there. It's not an exciting one, but he did have the option of killing off some of his own Dark Confidants.
Sure.
Chose to keep on drawing, and it did not work out for him in this case. But we have more Magic in the feature match area. We're moving our tables back around so we can see a little bit more of Burn versus Abzan and Company. On the left of our screen, that Alejandro Cesar. On the right, Bartolome Lewandowski. And already a Sin Collector in play that has exiled a card from Cesar's hand. And Grim Lavamancer, currently without a huge amount of fuel on the other side for the Burn deck.
Alejandro Cesa playing in his first Pro Tour.
Qualified from a top 4 at the GP in Porto Alegre earlier in the year.
A member of the Brotherhood of Fire. I keep getting the... I should just learn the original version of it.
Yeah, the little clue with mono red written on the T-shirt and a little flame on the sleeve. Very consistent in all of the messaging that's going on here from the Argentinian player. On the other side of things, Bartolome Lewandowski, he's played a Pro Tour prior to this one, a couple of Pro Tours in fact, along with a whole bunch of Grand Prix.
Is his Grand Prix top 8 with this Abzan Company deck?
I do not recall, but
I know that an Abzan Company deck looking very much like this top 8 at a European Modern GP. And I see that Lewandowski has one Grand Prix top 8. But yeah, I don't apologize. I don't remember the exact name.
well, Lewandowski here, his Birds of Paradise got killed off pretty sharpish, and that means that he's not in the best position when it comes to mana. That Quarter Calling, it does need a little bit in the way of creatures or lands to be able to get something going, and Collected Company needs 4 mana to really get going also. The one does support the other though, so certainly not completely out of it yet Lewandowski. Life totals 13 apiece. Looks like a Molten Rain got going for Cesar. Molten Rain, a card that, when it's good, it's super duper good. And this is a format where Tron was thought of as being one of the decks that may show up in Force.
True.
You know, with Kozilek and the like knocking around, you certainly don't want to rule out the opportunity to cast it.
Sounds like he top 8'd a standard GP with Jeskai tokens. Did Bartolome Lewandowski. Was in Krakow last year.
He's local GP then.
Yeah, I guess
Polish
so.
player.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Path to Exile, sending Grim Lavamancer away and giving Cesar the opportunity to find a land. Looks like that may have been declined. Goblin Guide and Monastery Swift Spear taking revenge here.
Ryuichi Tamada just attacked with 4 pack rats?
I heard that this was an Eldrazi deck. I'm calling for a steward's inquiry on this one.
I mean, the deck list starts with 4 Ivug and 4 Eldrazi Temple. Story checks out.
Fair enough.
Then Urborg. You can cast pack rat off Urborg.
I mean, I certainly like a pack rat as a backup plan.
Look, there are more Endbringers in the deck than there are pack rats.
All right.
That's an Eldrazi deck. It's 4-3, but I'm counting it.
All right, we'll allow it. In the meantime, though, big swings coming here from Alejandro Cesar. Lightning Bolt also going on here.
Sounds like those pack rats did get the job done. Ryuichi Tamada has won that match 2-1.
Now, the good thing for those of you that really want a chance to see that deck in action is because that's the King of the Hill table, Ryuichi Tamada will be in the feature match area next round. So even though we didn't get a chance to see him working his magic, we will potentially be able to get a little bit of a look in on that in the very next round here, round 5 at Pro Tour Oath of the Gatewatch.
This list is hilarious. So it's mono black, but it's got a ton of pain lands because they tap for both black and colorless. Underground River, Llanowar Waste, Caves of Coilos, and Sulphur Springs all make the team. 10 dual lands, essentially, that tap for C or B.
I love it. In the meantime here, though, Lewandowski, he's got to worry about how he's going to get out of this situation he finds himself in. Just the 5 life to work with and 2 creatures on the board that have managed to make it through to Alejandro Cesar's untap step. He knocks on the top of his deck. Sacred Foundry was the card in his hand previously. Slides out and reveals that he's actually just drawn, I think that is another Monastery Swift Spear there. So incrementally finding a few extra points here and there. Haste and prowess there. You have to think that Lewandowski a little worried here about exactly what's going to be coming for the last card in Cesar's hand. He's not going to mind too much that it's simply a land.
Goblin Guide reveals Liliana. The heretical healer, anyway.
Okay.
So wants to trade with the Goblin Guide, but meanwhile, here's Court of Calling.
So Court of Calling letting Lewandowski search his library for a creature. The Convoke, meaning he's got a bit of mana, and ooh, that's a nice one to fetch. Burrington Forge Tender. Just a 1-1, but a 1-1 with a very relevant ability when your opponent's deck is essentially mono-red.
Indeed.
You can sacrifice that one to prevent all damage from a red source. Great against sweepers, great against big burn spells, and a pretty fantastic blocker against the various creatures going on for Alejandro Cesar here.
It doesn't quite stabilize this board, though.
Oh no, like Lewandowski still has to worry. And 3 life, not the life total you want to be on against burn decks. There's an awful lot of spells that can potentially just force the sacrifice of that Burrington Forge Tender.
Right.
He goes
So
for a
here's
Collected Company, hoping to find something to bolster that creature just a little
Oh, main phase Collected Company hits a pair of Kitchen Finks. And you can see what that means on Alejandro Cesar's face. That is if you can see his face between the hands that are holding it.
bit. Yeah, the board went from being Well, I've pretty much got this game won to... I have a huge amount of extra work to do. 2 life gain for each of those kitchen finks coming to play. They both have persist. That means that even if Cesar is able to kill them off, they're coming back. That's 2 more life and another 2-1 to deal with.
So close. And you saw Alejandro. I think he probably knew about that collected company from a Goblin Guide previously. So, I mean, you saw him slow roll the draw last turn because he could have found the 3 damage last turn. He could have potentially won this game.
Yeah, each one of those kitchen finks virtually equating to some proportion of a time walk in this matchup. So 2 of them coming into play at the same time has just completely changed the face of this game. And this is, of course, the deciding game between these 2 players.
It was also smart of Lewandowski to do that on his main phase so that he didn't give Cesar any opportunity to respond to the life gain with a burn spell, for example.
Oof.
Jeez.
Anafenza, Kintree Spirit. So with this in play, whenever another token creature enters the battlefield, bolster 1, and that interacts very, very nicely with
Are we done?
persist.
Is it combo time? Yeah, Court of Calling up the Visara Seer, the entire combo has now been assembled. There was the Searing Blaze, Molten Rain. Ah, so close for Alejandro Cesar.
So just to take you through that, fetching up Viscera Seer gives a sacrifice outlet. With the Anafenza in play, you can start sacrificing kitchen finks.
Right, it comes back with persist.
Bolster 1. All of a sudden, you get rid of that -1/-1 counter on your kitchen finks. Everything's exactly where you were. You've got a scry out of your Viscera Seer and 2 more life.
So I'll do it again. Sack the kitchen finks.
Yeah, it turns out infinite damage, not a realistic amount of damage for the red deck to deal. Though it can sometimes feel like you take an awful lot from it. We're back here in the booth after 4 pretty electric rounds of Modern. We've got plenty more Modern to show you soon enough. Any particular favorites that you've seen thus far?
I mean, look, the Death Shadow aggro is sweet. I really want to see the Mono Black Eldrazi on camera, though. I mean, that to me was the most interesting thing coming into this Pro Tour. I mean, obviously, Splinter Twin getting banned shakes things up, so what's going to happen? How's the metagame going to move? But then there's this, can anybody figure out the right way to build Eldrazi? And, I mean, Ryoshi Tamada says it's Mono Black, it's, Eyes and Temples, of course, it's Orborg, it's Packrat, Thought-Knot Seer, Endbringer, Matter Reshaper, Reality Smasher.
Well, the cool thing is, as we mentioned, this is the King of the Hill table. We will have Ryuichi Tamada in the feature match area next round, and I would be shocked if we didn't get a chance to have a little look in.
I also hear that I don't think the Japanese players are the only ones on Mono Black Eldrazi.
Sweet.
So this may be the answer. I mean, of course, you get Thoughtseize, Inquisition, removal. Maybe that's the answer.
I think the cool thing for me is we figured out what the easy bits of the Eldrazi deck might be, but we've still got a whole Pro Tour to find out what the complicated bits are. We're going to head things back over to the news desk now so you can find out everything else that's been going on here in round 4 of Pro Tour through the Gatewatch.
Thanks very much to Tim Willoughby there with Randy Buehler. The first round of Modern is in the books, and the Eldrazi, well, they're making their mark early in the feature match area. And as we say, Ryoichi Tamada, he'll be back as King of the Hill in round 5. Now, 4 Hall of Famers to tell you about who only have 1 loss so far. John Finkel is 3-1. Paulo Vida Dama da Rosa of Brazil with all those top 8s. Darwin Castle is 3-1, and so is Luis Scott Vargas. He did win his last round of draft, has opened Modern with a win. Why don't we take our first look at the overall leaderboard? Now, still plenty of results to come in. As you can see, 3 minutes left on the round, but that still means tons of results to come in. By the time this round is finished, you're going to have round about 25 perfect records. So there'll be some more 4-0s to bubble up as the round finishes off. But you see Mike Sigrist in the top 10, Martin Muller ranked number 7, Fabrizio Anteri is underway with 4 wins, Thiago Saporito as well from Brazil. Well done to Suripong Popitagul of Thailand. They, of course, made it to the final of the World Magic Cup just a couple of months ago. He has put an end to the undefeated run of Martin Clement of Scotland, who was also in the top 8 of the World Magic Cup. Another Brazilian at 4-0, that's Rodrigo Gonçalves dos Santos. Carl Bogomez, undefeated, but is on 10 points rather than the full 12. That's as a result of a draw. And a surprising number of draws did happen in Limited, worth keeping an eye on as the tournament progresses tomorrow morning, just to see whether more players pick up those draws and we start to see that 1 point above or 2 points below the record being critical. Meanwhile, if there are 4-0s, that means that there are 0-4s as well. And what a rogues gallery at 0-4. Adrian Sullivan, Alan Comer, the Hall of Famer, Jacob Wilson, a modern Pro Tour finalist, and Brian Kibler. They are all at 0-4. And essentially, they are out of this Pro Tour. They can keep playing. They can come back tomorrow if they rattle off 4 wins. But at 4-4, even sweeping their draft pods, 7-4, sweeping Modern tomorrow, that's a big task, that would be 12-4, but their tie breaks are likely to be severely crippled by opening 0-4. So those 4 names, all of whom have Pro Tour top 8s to their name, looks like they won't be adding to them this time around. Someone who still might is our reigning world champion, Seth Manfield. He came in on the eve of the Pro Tour to talk to us about how testing went and his hopes for this Pro Tour weekend.
All right, I am here with Seth Manfield from Team Blitz. Seth, how are you? How's testing been going? What's been going on?
I'm a little bit under the weather, but hopefully that'll clear up by the Pro Tour. I went to Grand Prix Mexico City. That was sort of, I like to go to the Grand Prix the week before the Pro Tour. Some teams...
Little warm-up.
Some of the big teams don't like to, but the great thing about it is that it's the same limited format as this Pro Tour. So it's actually good practice, and there was a lot of good players in Mexico City, so that was kind of my jumping off point for the limited format, and I got a nice basis to work from and then report to my teammates. What we actually did is a bunch of us met up in Roanoke, Virginia. People will know that as the home of Star City because a lot of the players on our team actually write for them.
A lot of Team Blitz players work for or, are involved with Star City.
Yeah. And there's a lot of players that you might not necessarily associate with our team because it's kind of evolved over the years, and a lot of it's no longer Team TCG player. I still write for them, but I'm the only writer for TCG player, and now there's a lot of the people you would associate with this team, like the Ari Lax and the Craig Wesco, they're not here, but we've got people like Brian Kibler, Brad Nelson, Jerry Thompson, a host of big names, really. Not a huge team.
How many players? You said 9?
9, yeah. And so the nice thing about it is that it's modern, so we all have our niche archetypes that we like. And so we can go to each other and be like, hey, what do you think about this archetype? I know you've played it. Or we can hang out in Roanoke and be like, hey, Tom, we know you played Impact, you know, or whatever. So we have other players to draw upon, which is nice. And we didn't think that we would need to spend a whole week in one specific location testing because it's modern and the format doesn't change that much. But for this specific Pro Tour, it's actually been shaken up quite a bit.
It's been shaken up a bit,
so
yeah.
We kind of had to bite the bullet there. But
what's your overall confidence level with your PT prep? Do you feel like testing went well with Team Blitz?
I feel like I'm happy with the deck I'm playing. It's my style deck. I played landfall creatures at the last Pro Tour, and I feel confident with the deck I'm choosing. I think that we sort of picked half of us went one way, half of us went the other. I think that's pretty typical with a team. Not everyone's gonna have the same play style and want to play the same deck, but I do feel like we've kind of all gotten a lot of good limited information. Good. And that's been our main focus, honestly. It's just make sure you're good with limited. Modern's kind of, you never know what's going on, who's going to play what deck. There's so many different archetypes. We kind of fell into the trap of testing the Eldrazi deck a ton. We tested 10,000 different variations of that deck, and that kind of took a lot of our time, and I'm pretty sure none of us are going to play that deck, but that's just one of the new things. That was the newest archetype, and we have other decks that we can just fall back on and be like, you know what, we know how to play this deck.
All right. Well, I'd like to wish you and your team the best of luck at the Pro Tour.
Yep.
Thanks very much to Seth Manfield for giving us his time on the eve of the Pro Tour. We always appreciate when the players can do that for us. So, our players at 4-0. Frank Karsten, 100% we know is on Affinity. He's 4-0. Alex Magleton, 99% he's on Affinity. He's 4-0. Jason Chung from New Zealand also. Nathan Holliday's advanced. The 2006 World Champion, Makihita Mihara, is 4-0. Fabrizio Anteri, the winner of Mexico City, 4 Grand Prix titles for him now. He's 4-0, and so is Martin Muller. That man, it seems, just cannot be stopped at the moment. Now, are you in Latin America right now? Fasten your seatbelts, because this is going to be a good few minutes for you. You've just seen him on camera, didn't quite pull it out, double kitchen finks, didn't go his way. But we're going to have a little bit of translation and a lot of English, and we'll see how we go. It's Deck Tech time here at the Pro Tour, and we're going to the band of the Mono Red Brothers. Here's Brian David Marshall and Alejandro Cesar.